what the people want, they have to do it. They represent us.
Tonight, what happens when a national sample of 300 people come together for an extraordinary experiment in democracy?
Would these boys still go around about with weapons if they thought at the end of the day they were going to be hanged?
The people of Britain are here to reveal what they really want.
What are you going to do about it? You know, we're all stuck with rising crime. Come up with some answers.
In a unique experiment, we've brought together for the first time ever a random representative sample of the British people. We've already surveyed their detailed views on the subject of crime, on hanging, juvenile crime, tougher sentencing, Bobby's on the beat. In that survey, as in most opinion polls, people were having to give their opinions with little time to think and no chance to find out the full facts. Now, they're about to be shut up together for a whole weekend to learn those facts.
We're the last dustbin, and if we don't try and do something with these kids, then I'm sorry, you are the next potential victims.
At the end, we'll be asking them the same questions again.
The questionnaires will come with your own name on.
The resulting changes of opinion could well be dramatic. We believe a significant proportion may alter their views. What happens to these people has enormous implications for democracy in this country. Welcome to History in the Making. What you are about to see has never been attempted before. Hundreds of people from all over Britain have been brought together to tackle an issue of national importance, the crisis of rising crime. The politicians have failed to crack the problem, but can the people do any better? They've got just 2 days to do it, so they're going to have to work hard. They've come with their own ideas, of course, but they're going to be bombarded with new information, and cooped up with 300 plus strangers for a weekend guarantees the sparks will fly. But it's democracy in action, in a way that hasn't been tried before. They've got 48 hours to crack crime.
I've got a busload who's been on the road since early in the morning.
Our 300 were picked by random sampling from 40 different constituencies in England, Scotland and Wales by an independent survey organisation, SCPR. They come from many walks of life and represent every shade of opinion, so the views they start out with mirror the attitudes of the nation. All they have in common is that they are registered to vote. What we're attempting is a new form of democracy. It's the dream of a man who thinks our current system fails the people. Most people don't have the time or motivation to really think about important issues. But these 300 people are being given just that opportunity. The process begins.
My name is Sheena MacDonald. I'm the presenter of the television programme, so I'll be sharing this weekend with you. Thank you then for coming, and can I also congratulate you for committing yourself to this project, because by doing so, you are taking part in an unprecedented experiment, really, in democratic activity. This is the first time ever, not just in Britain, but the first time in the world, that a random representative cross-section of people have come together to tackle an issue of national importance in this way. The whole weekend, if you like, then, is, well, a laboratory, or perhaps a test tube is a better metaphor. I'm going to hand you over to the man whose idea this is. He's been working on it for years. I know you know a little bit about this. He'll tell you more about it. All over the world, there's interest in this kind of democratic activity. You are the first people to turn this man's ideas into action. He's come all the way from Texas to be here this evening. I'll hand you over now to Professor Jim Fishkin. Jim.
Thank you. You have won a lottery offering you the chance to do something historic. Nothing like this, as Sheena says, has actually been done before, or has been done for at least 2,400 years. That is, not since the citizens' juries and legislative commissions chosen by lottery, by random sample, in ancient Athens, has there been a statistical microcosm of an entire citizenry brought together to a single place to deliberate on important public issues. At the end, you tell us what you really think. And if you do that, we can set an example, I believe, for democracy all over the world. And it would be an example of a kind of democracy that brings power to the people, but under conditions where the people can think.
We're going to show you a short film now about crime.
Crime has more than doubled in the past 15 years. In Britain today, a crime is committed every 5.5 seconds. Shootings and stabbings are constantly in the news. Every 2 minutes, someone commits a violent crime. But most crime is against property. Every 22 seconds, someone's home or business is burgled. Every 20 seconds, a car is stolen or broken into. The fear of crime affects all our lives, whether we've ever been victims of crime or not. 9 out of 10 women are scared to go out at night. And we are all afraid for our children. Parents can never forget what happened to Jamie Bulger, a child murdered by other children. Or to Nikki Conroy, stabbed to death in her school classroom.
Here in Manchester, over a weekend, our 300 people will wrestle with the central issues of crime: the prison system, the courts, policing, prevention. They've all come with their own views. They'll examine the claims and counterclaims of disputing experts. And they'll question politicians on their policies to cut crime.
Critics point to the failure of education. They say schools no longer teach children the difference between right and wrong. Others also voice concern about violence on TV and video nasties. By the age of 15, a boy will have seen up to 30,000 people die violently on TV. This is bound to have an effect on his behaviour. And the increasing link between drugs and crime frightens many. Police say half the thefts in some areas are committed by drug users stealing to feed their habit. You may think there's something to be said for all these points of view. Try to remain open-minded. Perhaps if you're lucky, you and your group may come to some agreements on ways to crack crime.
One hour into the event, and already our 300 have joined up into their groups. From this moment on, they have to stay together. Immediately, they find they have a lot in common.
It has been broken into once, but they didn't even realise till a few days later. All they took was his camera off the table.
She had her room burgled, and the next day, our house was burgled.
The first time it happened, I ran back out the house because I thought someone was still in there. Because the place was still warm, and it's just horrible.
The police can't even do their job properly, and if they do their job, what happens then?
Yeah, you are, sir.
The guy's back out on the street 3 minutes after he bangs him up.
A high proportion of our 300 have been victims of crime. A tenth have been burgled in the last 2 years. A quarter have had their cars broken into. They're clearly going to have a lot to talk about over the course of the weekend, and many have strong opinions. This is their chance to have a say on crime, and your chance to hear what people really think, particularly the people we're going to follow through the weekend. The first is Pam Tunstall, who has 4 children and lives in Birmingham. Pam's life is blighted by the crime on her estate.
Very rough around here. There's not a day goes by when something doesn't happen. There's a shop that's been broken into, or somebody's been mugged. There's been a shooting around here. I've been attacked myself. Is it going to stop? Is somebody going to come and do something about it?
She worries about her children's future because so many other youngsters on the estate have got into trouble.
I do worry about them very much because, there's lots of kids around here all in the same situation. I'd say a lot of it is to do with unemployment. There's a lot of kids out there, they're bored, there's nothing for them to do. They've got no money, and I'd say families as well. A lot of people probably won't like me for saying this, but I do think it does stem from family life.
In contrast to Pam, Carmel Meredith lives in a quiet village in South Wales. But she's worried about crime too.
Hate to say it, girls, time to go. Come on.
There seems to be a lot more of it than there used to be.
In the last week, we've had 2 burglaries in broad daylight. Within the last month, we've had a stabbing, which is, totally shocked the community. We've had many, many instances of break-ins within schools.
But Carmel is unsure what the answer is.
I'm open-minded enough to listen and learn on this weekend. So I'm looking forward to listening to the experts and then making up my mind. I'd like to learn more about the judicial service and how it treats the youth, because I'm not quite sure, I must admit. My basic instinct is that the short, sharp lesson has got to be the answer, purely from the discipline I would inflict on my own children.
If it's out of neglect, surely if somebody's taken criminal neglect, then it is a crime. Yes.
Unlike Carmel, Steve Narry has arrived at the weekend with very firm views. He has particularly strong opinions about how criminals should be treated.
Well, that's murder, isn't it? There's no two ways about that. That's not even neglect.
Steve has little time for the view that crime is linked to unemployment.
I don't think unemployment is an excuse for crime at all. A lot of people are unemployed. My wife was unemployed for quite a while. She didn't go around stealing cars or anything.
And when it comes to cutting crime, Steve's view is clear. Get tough on criminals.
Bringing back hanging is the most important thing in this country, which we need to act as a deterrent, to bring down the crime levels, and we need to incorporate it on a range of crimes against society. And there's certain people that should not be allowed to society, and that's it, just get rid of them out of society. We could bring some sort of point system, rather similar to the car fines, whereupon every conviction you get notches up a certain number of points depending on the crime. Now, should you go above a certain number of points, you are deemed a habitual criminal. And as such, you are a danger to society, etc. And you should get hung. That's the bottom line. Get rid of society, all these people out of society that are messing it up for the rest of us.
Some of our 300 have themselves committed crimes. Matthew Forrest has a criminal record. He's not sure how the group will react when they find out, so for the moment he's keeping quiet. Matthew is 22. He's leading an honest life now, but he admits he's committed several offences in the past.
I've done some real bad things wrong. I started meeting new friends, got into bad company, and just one thing led to another, and got worse and worse. Silly things like taking wheels off cars and just for the odd bit of cash, or receiving the odd stolen stereo.
Matthew was arrested for causing criminal damage. The ensuing experience was a big shock for him.
The police got involved and we got arrested and got put in a cell, and don't want to be put in a cell again because that was horrible.
He says the shock of his arrest and court appearance ended his life of crime. Now he's working hard and looking forward to a good future.
Just because I did that one thing wrong doesn't mean I'm going to do it for the rest of my life, does it? You learn by your mistakes, so don't want to go in there again.
Matthew, Steve and Carmel, they're all getting on well tonight. But what will happen tomorrow when Steve finds out about Matthew's past? And will Carmel come to some firm opinions? Tomorrow, our 300 people will get down to the serious business of wrestling with crime in Britain today.
is 218. 707. 707. A2 is 215. No, you're in room 218. It's 222A. 332. 707.
It's Saturday morning and we've taken over Salford University. We've no idea what's going to happen here today or indeed over this weekend. We know there are people here who think that single mothers are the problem. I don't think the single mothers here will be too impressed. We know there are people who think that hanging should be restored, that hooligans should be birched. Others think that young hooligans should be counselled and cared for. In other words, every shade of British public opinion is represented here.
Good morning, my name's Steve Norrie. I'm a draftsman working in Gloucestershire.
Carmel Meredith, big 4-0 this year.
I'm sorry?
Big 4-0 this year.
Right.
Very proud of it. I'm married, one child of 8, and I work in adult education in South Glamorgan.
I'm Pam. I'm a housewife. I come from Birmingham and I've got 4 children.
First, our groups introduce themselves to each other and exchange their experiences of crime, some very violent.
So we've been burgled, and my husband is regularly broken into. He has a garage.
2 occasions, my car has been turned on its roof. Another occasion, my son-in-law, his car was stolen, used in a ram raid, and then dumped in a lake.
In the past 7 months, I've been burgled twice. The last one happened only last week. And I am very frightened.
My mother works in a building society and she has been held up, I think 3 times now over a period of years, which is obviously very worrying, and you feel frustrated as a result of that.
My brother was murdered 17 years ago. 20 he was.
Do you want to say any more about it?
Not at the moment, no.
That's fine.
Now's the moment Matthew has to admit his past.
I've stolen a car before, well, more than one, I should say. But I didn't do it for money or anything, I did it for the buzz. I must admit I did it because friends did it.
Were you caught?
Everyone is now warned to be tolerant by the moderator leading the group, a journalist from the Independent newspaper, part sponsors of the weekend.
We can get worked up, but we don't insult each other, and we're not personally rude to each other, and we recognise that everybody's view is equally valid.
Nielsen, who admitted what he's done, and these people who've killed...
The group quickly moves to debate Steve's main concern.
We've got a situation at the moment where criminals, if they are caught, are put before the courts, and if they do get convicted, right or wrong, they then get away with it. They get put on the street with a bit of probation and a few hours, bit of service here or there, or something pathetic.
All the people I've spoken to, telling them I'm coming here, have indicated that hanging and flogging and things like that are not good enough for anybody that's in their house or has done harm to their property.
Now, would we hang or flog our friend here who very bravely talked about joyriding when he was younger?
I would say no. I would say no, not on the first time. Anybody can, well, depends on the crime of course, but anybody can commit a crime, it'd be a mistake, they were misguided, in with the wrong crowd, etc, etc. Put him in front of a court and you then say, don't do this again. But having said that, if they go back again and again and getting caught again and again, it means they're stupid.
Every time.
It gets tougher, it should go for longer jail sentences, long jail sentences, and then hang the bastards.
But it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Because nobody ever believes they're going to get caught. So it doesn't.
After five times, and on the 6th time they get bloody strung up.
They don't. We know that people don't get caught anyway. The amount of criminals who actually get caught is a small percentage. So most of the criminals, I think, take a chance that they're not going to be the ones who get caught. So that you can have the worst penalties in the world. It doesn't deter. Because they're not going to get caught.
They've done it before. They've done it a lot more times than anybody's nicked a car. Well, it's like it's his living. It's what he does for a living. He can't get a job. Money on the dole's rubbish, isn't it, at the end of the day? So to get the extra cash, he does what he likes doing. Get a buzz out of it.
Excuse me, what about the person that's out working, buying the car? They park their car at the house, they go up in the morning, the car's been stolen. Don't you think about them? Just because you're unemployed, is that an excuse?
I've done it a couple of
I
times.
don't think that's an excuse to commit crime.
You lost your job and you
For
had
everything you
nothing,
get.
right? And they said you've got to go on the dole.
Don't blame the dole on it. I've been out of work 2 years, but I ain't thought of nicking anything over it. It annoys me the way they keep saying that. I'm trying to get a job and I'm trying to get on courses and different things, but I wouldn't think of nicking anyone's motor. It's ridiculous to say.
They've admitted what
Why do they, if you're convinced in advance, why don't I ask them why
All over the campus, every group is debating how to tackle crime. Nearly 4/5 of the people think tougher sentences would cut crime.
Between 9 and 5.
people in
They're
prison.
not breaking at night. You don't see blokes
Pay
with
for it.
swag and stripy jumpers. They come
The
in.
two young children that actually killed James. We're led to learn that possibly they would be out in 8 years' time. Now, to me, that's not good enough. They should stay in there for the rest of their life, in my opinion. I know they're only young children, but they have committed a murder. Horrible murder.
They knew what they were doing.
They did know what they were
Yeah,
doing.
I-
Definitely. So they should never come out again, in my opinion. And it's same when they give a person a life sentence. The life sentence does not mean life. It may be 20, it may be 25 years.
Or
It
less- yes,
should
less
be
than that.
life.
The actual serving is supposed to be about 12 on average.
It should
for
be
a life
life.
sentence.
Maybe there should be 4 types of taking life. Accidental death, manslaughter, killing and murder. The top end of the scale, murder. If you commit murder, we kill you. As a society. The end.
Is there anyone here who disagrees with
I
that?
have my doubts.
Kenneth, tell us.
Well,
about it.
purely because mistakes are made. That's my only reason. But it must admit, I'm even being swayed more because you see it so often now, these people. And I mean, apart from anything else, if you get a life sentence, it should at least mean that. I mean, if you kill someone, take a life deliberately, you should pay the ultimate price. You should have your liberty taken away. And I shouldn't have to confront you in the street, meet you in the street.
Can we accept that someone will literally rot in prison?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. When they do these crimes, yes.
their punishment, isn't it?
No, I think they should be killed.
Yeah,
not
totally.
I think
Because
they
that
should
has
have
another
the-
effect of saving
No,
us money for the
killing's
country
too good
too.
for them.
They're already-
Yes, I
they're
think
already
they
at the
should
top.
be left to rot.
Let them suffer. Let them think
Well,
about what
that's
they've
real,
done.
that's real vengeance, that.
When they do these
Oh yes, I
crimes.
think we're really more civilised as we get them like a bug and we stick a pin through and watch them wriggle.
Right. Let us come back. Let us come back to the question of prison.
Before the weekend, when we did a survey of the opinions of our 300 people on crime, 2/3 wanted to bring back hanging. And in the groups, the case against is rarely heard.
And it's fine for us to say, yes, kill him or whatever, we might all agree, but how many of us would want to actually stand there and do it?
We can build cars with computers and robots, get those to do that kind of thing for us as well.
Who's going to press the button?
Yeah, have a robot.
They haven't got the brain to do it.
They're still not satisfied. They keep trying to burn it down. don't they?
Will they take the notice?
What we left with, we let the people coming out and stuff, and they're not happy.
Listening to all these debates is Professor Jim Fishkin, the man who came up with the idea of getting the public together on such an ambitious project.
What I would like to do.
He believes what we're seeing is the real ideal of democracy, voters deciding on issues only after real debate with their peers.
This is the British public, if you like. Fantastically so. They have the same attitude about crime and about all the particular dimensions of crime that we've been looking for as the general British citizenry. So their starting point is the same. But if everybody had this opportunity, what difference do you think it would make? Well, then you'd have a completely different kind of public opinion. That's why this thing is so unusual, because it's meant to measure what the entire country would come to if it consisted of ideal citizens who were engaged in serious debate about the issues. Have you met any of these citizens? Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I've just been delighted by their enthusiasm for the whole thing, and they're enjoying it. I mean, some of them have said they would have paid to come.
But this person...
When it comes to dealing with criminals, we know from the survey of the 300 conducted before this weekend that 3/4 of them think prisons are too soft.
Nicking cars.
They shouldn't have television. They should be denied that privilege. That's the whole point. If you're in prison, you can't go watch television. If you want to watch television, you keep your nose clean and stay at home.
The cost of keeping them in prison, you should find a way, while they're in prison, for them to be productive. to contribute to the archive.
And I don't think that you should put hardened criminals with young offenders or less offenders. I think that it should be a place of learning in truth and not of learning crime.
People go to prison and they're released and they're too...
I want someone to jump. Well, it should be left to somebody in authority, not normal people. It doesn't have to necessarily be done.
In one part of the country, the rapist will get so many years. Another part of the country, they get another different sentence altogether.
Yeah, but when you get raped, it's not them that's the criminal, it's us.
Oh, yes.
I went through all that. It's not them who's in the wrong,
But I
it's
think
the women
if
who's
they say
in the
10
wrong.
years, they should have 10 years and not come out in 6 years.
There are many men who didn't rape, but a woman could say she was raped.
It's a difficult one.
That's a very difficult point. I mean, I do see both sides, and some women are diabolically wicked as well. They're spiteful, and they'll say they've been raped. But if it's really proven, castrate the lot.
Time for a break from debate. But even over the coffee, the discussion goes on all the issues. What to do with criminals, how to catch them, and how to prevent crime.
So it's peer pressure, isn't it, for kids? I mean, if their mate's going to do it, they're not going to be sort of stand back and go, oh, I'm not going to do that, I'll get into trouble, because their mates just call them all sorts. So they'll do it just to stay with their mates.
I was also surprised the amount of people that wanted to bring back hanging as well.
Yes.
I mean, we all nearly virtually agreed on that. For different reasons.
They've got to be proved guilty if we're going to be held.
Yeah, but the thing is
without
though,
doubt.
nowadays you've got DNA, you've got everything. You can prove near enough 99% that it's going to be that person without the police having to do anything too drastic.
The old system of policemen walking round his own patch.
In the survey of their opinions, putting more police on the beat came out near the top when we asked for ideas on how to cut crime.
So many minutes have you got anymore?
We used to have 2 village policemen who used to be there, one on duty. With the 2 of them covered the town for the whole time. But that disappeared, and so we're 5 miles away now from the nearest police station.
We're supposed to have got police station where I live, but only last week I tried to phone, and to my amazement, the whole police station was closed.
I've spoken to policemen recently, and they say they are bogged down by paperwork. It's even, in here it says the same thing. Why?
They're having to say, which is your priority? Right, is a murder here or a serious assault here? We'll deal with that. Those burglaries there, just record those. Those motor vehicles that have been stolen, just record those. That's what's happening today.
You almost felt like, is it worth bothering the police with it's just a car being nicked, they've got much more important things to do, but then you think, well, hang on, it's our car's being nicked. So you do feel as if you're not important enough.
Justice,
Well, I think...
And when it comes to burglary, 9/10 of our people, according to the survey, have no confidence in the police to get their stolen goods back.
They don't seem to be there when we need them. And I don't think throwing more money at them is the answer.
What is the answer?
Well, what is the answer?
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, you either.
Well, I don't suppose you do either.
To help to focus...
Our 300 are a representative cross-section of the British people selected by SCPR, an independent survey organisation. Each member of the electorate had an equal chance of selection. 2, 3. What I'm interested to know is what you think, given your experience, might happen this weekend.
I think the first stage has probably begun to happen, which is that people who came here with pretty certain views are now beginning to question them. I don't think everybody, those are the strongest views, don't, but some are beginning to question now whether or not they're going to go back to their original positions, whether they're going to move on, well, that remains to be seen.
If people can't afford it, they would still...
Some issues are complicated, like the right of suspects to remain silent under police questioning, which the government currently wants to limit. Some of Steve's group are worried that people might be pressurised into confessions.
Then get rid of, if there is a group of society, I don't know, perhaps they're mentally retarded or something, I don't know.
But you have
Just name some, because I don't know.
Well, I think that if certain people, if you took them to the police station and questioned them, the police are clever enough to talk people into perhaps saying something they didn't really want to say.
it is a very frightening experience, particularly if you're not used to it, and you're subjected to questioning by one or two officers, and now they're supposed to record it, of course, but even so, they can present questions in such a way that a terrified, trembling suspect who's suddenly been brought out of his bed and taken into a police station can say things that have a very damning and incriminating implication.
And that's not as easy as it
But
sounds.
some other groups are more worried that the right to silence is being abused by criminals.
Well, the right of silence is when the police arrest anyone, then they start questioning them. They just don't say anything. And that's their right.
Where were you last night?
Where they can say no, they don't answer.
No.
I mean, it's horrible to have someone, jailed or something, but then again, a lot of these people that are getting off.
Do you think the regulations are too tight?
Yeah.
Institutions changes.
What's really interesting is the level of expertise amongst the people themselves who are here. Of course, everyone's an expert in his or her own experience, but there are so many people here who are directly involved in the debate about crime. There's lawyers, criminals, magistrates, policemen, and of course, parents and teachers.
A lot of kids today have got no respect for authority whatsoever. Police, etc.
Is that different today to how it used to be? I mean, is there something specific that's...
Yeah, because I think what it is, I mean, like a 9-year-old today, if a policeman spoke to him, he'll think, oh God, it's just a policeman. 10 years ago, he'll think, oh no, I don't want a police to speak to me. You know, so that's a difference there.
Kids are left alone to fend for themselves. And they just let to get up and do what they like.
Yeah.
You know, mum's perhaps had to go to work and kids are left and, there's nobody there for them. They've got nobody to speak to ask advice. So they're just out on the streets and they're learning from the streets.
If we're talking about prevention, we go back to the crib. And when a child is born, parenting skills don't always come naturally. There are natural mothers and they're parents, not just mothers, parents. And I believe that parenting skills can be taught.
Before the weekend, our survey showed 9 out of 10 of our 300 thought the role of parents was crucial in cutting crime, and that it was vital to teach children the difference between right and wrong.
I went to speak to the head teacher and she said, oh, it's not cheek or insolence, it's free expression. That's what they're calling it now, free expression.
Now, if a child goes home and says the teacher's done this, well, the teacher wouldn't dare lay a finger on the child now, but if that were to happen, the parent would then go to the school and assault the teacher. And that's happening very frequently. We often hear about, well, the pyramid's gone upside down.
And 4/5 of our 300 believed that firmer discipline in schools would reduce crime in Britain.
If I did that as a kid, my father would have known about it. He would have known about it. He would have bloody kicked me. Well, I wouldn't be here now.
That's right.
I'd be bloody dead. He would have bloody given me a hell of a thrashing.
Did your father know what you were doing when you're out?
You're 10-year-old, your parents ought to know where you are. I mean, if you let a 10-year-old roam the streets at 10 o'clock at night, they're not up to any good.
Well, no, I don't think you can say that. I don't think you can say that.
At 10 o'clock, at 10 o'clock at night, 10 years old.
You'd like to think, I never let
my two never
went out
went
at
out
10-year-old.
at 10 o'clock at night.
But I mean, there's people who do.
Yeah, because they don't bother what
But if
the
you
kids
take
are
them
doing.
away from their parents, does it help the children any more than...
But some
I
parents...
mean, you're disrupting their family life. The only thing they
course you
have
are.
got.
You're the teacher. How would you chastise or punish, say, a 15-year-old in your class for doing wrong in your class?
Well, I would say...
I.e. said he cursed you. What would you do to punish that?
I would always
person?
say to someone that I'd never get myself in that situation. I don't get into situations whereby students don't have respect for me.
The teachers need more power, full stop.
Yes, well, that's
The
what
teachers should be allowed to correct a child if it means caning, well, cane the child.
Yes.
Correct.
But I'd like to go back a little bit further. Do you believe there's such a thing as the criminal classes?
Me personally, yes.
So therefore, we are breeding criminals. It's a genetic thing. The easiest way to solve a genetic problem is to not let it breed, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sounds awful. Are we godlike now, eh?
Steve's group has started work on the next stage of the experiment. Questions for the teams of experts, including a former criminal, who they'll meet this afternoon.
What about a question like,
Like if you was put in jail early,
Yeah.
Or either that, or what do you think the best deterrent from your point of view would have been, or what would have stopped you committing your crime originally?
That's quite
For a
younger person, you know, at a younger age.
Yeah, there we are. I mean, are you happy with that? I thought it was rather a good thing to do. Do you want to be lumbered with that?
Yeah, go on.
Do you want to be lumbered with that? You're lumbered.
Don't say hang them.
Yes. And then, yeah, you try that. Yeah. I'm going to hang on.
There's an hour's break now before the teams of experts arrive. The morning has seen many arguments, but none has got out of control. So has Carmel disagreed with anyone so far?
Yes, very much. In there. Very, very amicably, you know, we agree to disagree, and it's been wonderful because it's just an exchange of ideas. And we both listened and...
Disagree with each other?
Yeah.
So far, it's views like Steve's which have dominated the morning. But some of those opinions are about to be challenged. The panels of experts have arrived. 9 people who bring with them some clear surprises.
Prison bus recognises
They're going to spend the afternoon bombarding our 300 with facts and opinions on crime.
You will actually start to develop part of a kid's character that he never knew he had before.
To society from the outside rather than the very expensive model of keeping them incarcerated in prisons.
The threat of imprisonment is probably neither here or there. So the point about it is on one level.
Here we have the first of the 3 panels of experts. First of all, on my near left is Scott Stevens, who found himself a guest of Her Majesty at the age of 23 and has served a total, I believe, of 16 years in Britain's prisons. My far left is Dr. Roger Matthews, who is a criminologist at the Centre for the Study of Public Order at Leicester University. David Golding is president of the Superintendents Association, which is the staff association for police superintendents.
We've got more in the current prison system than we've ever had before.
Our 300 have exchanged their views this morning, but will any of them change their opinions after they've heard from the experts? Steve Narry's views on crime are immediately challenged.
I would like to ask Mr. Scott Stephen, that what sentence would have deterred him from committing the crime initially?
anyone who goes out to commit a crime, unless they're a professional criminal, does not associate the two. He doesn't associate the cause with the effect. He doesn't see the possibility of something happening to him. He really doesn't, and you mustn't think he does. The guy who goes out and steals a car from this campus this afternoon to joyride does not in the slightest bit consider he's going to get caught. So the question doesn't mean anything to me because I don't know.
One of the surprises for our group this afternoon is that the police are not enthusiastic about long sentences for most offenders.
My personal view is that prison is there to be used in short, sharp, very austere bursts for the appropriate offences, because I'm sure there are people serving currently who perhaps could be making a far greater retribution to society from the outside rather than the very expensive model of keeping them incarcerated in prisons.
Next, a challenge to our group's overwhelming view that prisons are too soft.
Oh dear. There's always a sort of movement every so often that you should make prisons tougher. I'm not quite sure what you want to do. Most prisons at the moment have people banged up for 12 hours a day in a very small room with very little to do. Their contacts with their family and friends are restricted and directed through staff. But what do you want to do to make them tough? I don't know how you can make them tougher. I don't know what you want to do. If you want to make them physically tougher, I guess that would be fairly easy. But emotionally, you can't tell what it's going to do to anybody anyway. Some people crumble in the first day. Some people would never crumble. It wouldn't matter what you did to them.
If you want to disgruntle people while they're inside, if you want to create agitation, if you want to create frustration, then fine. Most of the people that are in prisons are not people who actually have an awful lot to lose, and most of the people that you're looking at are people who are suffering all kinds of levels of social, personal and economic deprivation before they go into prison. And basically how austere you make prisons, to be honest, makes very little difference to the actual effects of these things. What it probably does make a lot of difference to are things like riots and disturbances in prisons. If you want high levels of riots and disturbances in prisons, then fine, make prisons austere places. If you want to disgruntle people while they're inside, if you want to create agitation, if you want to create frustration, then fine, make prisons austere places. If you want a constructive regime, then austerity is not a word you ought to be thinking about.
I mean, I don't think we're advocating cruelty or anything like that when we talk about being austere, but at the ultimate sanction, as far as I'm concerned, is that it should be seen as a deterrent. Certainly, it should be a place that prisoners shouldn't look forward to going to. They shouldn't want to return having been there, and it should be sufficiently tough in short bursts to instill perhaps the wish in their minds that they will not reoffend and not want to go back to such a place again.
I shall thank Scott Stevens, David Golding and Roger Matthews very much indeed. You've got a 5-minute breather and then the next panel arrives. Good luck with your next group of people. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
I was interested in the former criminal. I'd like to know what makes him tick.
Well, you tend to think that prison will be a deterrent. Can't see any reason why people would want to be locked up. And when it came out that criminals don't really think about prison, they are so focused on what they're doing that they don't really think about the punishment. And I would have tended to think that people would be worried about going to jail, but it doesn't appear to be so, which is quite interesting.
On my near left, Dr. Barry Irving, Director of the Police Foundation, which is an independent research body. On his left, Charles Pollard, Chief Constable of Thames Valley Police and a leading member of ACPO, the Chief Constable's organisation. Well known, I am told, for his attacks on the gamesmanship and play acting that he thinks are part of the barrister's stock in trade. On his left, a barrister. Michael Hill QC, who spends a lot of time in the criminal court, sometimes defending suspected criminals, sometimes leading the prosecution against them.
Tell the camera.
Are we there?
Yes.
Gordon?
My question is, why is there a lack of police on the beat?
Quite simply, the demands on the police have gone up over the last 20 years so enormously as compared to the number of resources that we just haven't got enough people to go round. Hence, not nearly as many bobbies on the beat as there used to be. And we all in the police service believe that the key to British policing is that relationship between the local bobby and the community. And I wish we could get more bobbies on the beat tomorrow.
Do you agree, Barry Irving?
Well, I'm afraid we're fudging the issue a bit here because it's very difficult to show catching criminals isn't necessarily best coped with by having more bobbies on the beat. It's been sold as a general panacea, as a general good. But in fact, you have to look at exactly what the bobby on the beat can do, what his capability is. And if you look very closely at that, you get some rather disturbing and rather difficult answers. And those answers aren't really being appreciated by the people who continually call for more bobbies on the beat.
Do you accept that, Charles Barnard?
I don't think I'd fall out at all with Barry over that. I was saying, do you want more bobbies? We were saying we wanted to put them on there. I didn't say that would automatically reduce crime or result in detections. What it would do is reassure people more. It would certainly do much more in terms of social misbehaviour, vandalism, graffiti. It would do a lot for public confidence. But there's certainly the idea that more bobbies on the beat will just stop crime. As Barry says, I agree, it's not like that at all.
And there's time in this session to tackle the proposed changes to the suspect's right to silence.
Secondly, we have enough experience now of the extent to which people who are being interviewed by the police, particularly those who've been taken into custody, not being able to cope with the situation. And I'm talking about the major criminals, I'm talking about small people who are arrested and interviewed for small crimes. That they find themselves confessing to things that they didn't do. None of us believe that we would ever do it, do we? And yet they do.
Time for a break, but there's no escape yet for the Chief Constable.
What you need is a national census to actually bring in the legislation, and then it's irrevocable. Even then you could say, well, unless without another census, Parliament can't even take it away.
I wouldn't actually agree with you about that. I think we elect people to govern, and I think to try and run the country just by a census for things like hanging, I personally don't think would be right. I think it's quite a complex issue. I understand a lot of strong feelings which you obviously hold about hanging and capital punishment. I personally don't hold that view.
There's a sort of an urge for revenge, which, if you're professionally involved, you can no longer really take seriously, or you can no longer take account of, because it seems too primitive.
Normal people, they don't need training.
Don't you think they need some help, a little bit of guidance and help?
You know, you see it in schools, if you bring the parents in and, tell them they've got to take responsibility for what's happening, and if it then goes further with the police.
No, for people it's self-afflicted.
I've not sorry for anybody like that. It's a shame for parents and people getting shoe things.
Next, information on juvenile offenders.
We went sailing in a 54.
The new panellists are Sahel Hussain from Crime Concern, Chief Superintendent Michael Woodhouse, West Yorkshire CID, and Joe Whitty, Governor of Feltham Young Offenders Centre.
The kids who come into the prison are the same kids who've been coming into prison for the last 120 years. They're the poor, the dispossessed, basically they are poorly educated, and there is no hope for the future. And even more so today, because there is no way out of the dreadful situation that many of them are in, unless we actually start to reverse and start to come up with some better ideas than the ones which are usually thrown at us, particularly those from the political arena.
I have to echo something that Joe said. In a way, he does get all the failures, because by the time they get to him, we've tried cautioning, we've tried probation, we've tried fines and the other non-custodial sentences. So when we say that prison doesn't work, we've given him a really hopeless task in the first place.
I'd like to ask the panel whether they think the media has an influence on crime, and in what way, and what changes you would like to see in the media.
Dr. Sahel Hussain of Crime Concern is the first to answer.
Well, there's very little hard evidence to prove one way or the other what's happening. My own feeling is yes, it does, and the more violence that young people are exposed to, I think the more acceptable it becomes to them. That's my impression. Other people would argue that they divorce themselves from reality when they're watching it on the television.
As far as I'm concerned, from my years of experience, I think the media's got a very high price to pay, and it's only a matter of time before there's actually evidence which indicates that there is a direct correlation between what we see every day, both on our TVs, on the cinema and in the newspapers, and serious crime and serious offending.
So what's the first change you would make, Joe Whitty, to the status quo, given that we've just had a recent change?
I would insist on a much greater control of the glorification of violence.
More censorship.
Much more censorship.
We've got so many good questions. Let's move on to another area.
What is the evidence about the effectiveness of different sorts of sentencing?
Well, the bad news, or the good news, whichever way you look at it.
Did it either encourage you, or did you think about these like family and friends that you might upset before you did it?
I just wonder whether it's a good example to the peers.
With this particular distinct type of boy.
Do you feel it should be made a criminal offence for the police to investigate?
It really doesn't matter because they're so damaged.
Finally, Pam raises an emotive issue. I haven't heard from you yet this afternoon because although I value your views, it's nice to hear some new ones. Yes, lady there.
I actually think it's disgusting that sending these young offenders away on holiday like that. What about the victim? What about sending them on a holiday?
When you use the word, disgusting, in a way, all that we're trying to do is to put right, in my particular case, the years of neglect and the years of hopelessness and the years of failure that have taken place with so many of these youngsters by every other agency. In a way, I've used the term, we're the last dustbin. And if we don't try and do something with these kids, then I'm sorry, you are the next potential victims.
Tomorrow's session for politicians. Can I thank Joe Whitty, so help me say, Deputy Chief Superintendent Michael Woodhouse, ask you to do the same. And before you leave, Liz will tell you what to do next. So if you could thank them and then just wait a moment. Thank you. And now straight back into the groups with a lot to talk about.
What is the point in keeping a child in a home with a father that's in and out of prison? They know nothing but crime from the day they're born.
Joe Whitty said he always thought that until 3 years ago, and he changed his mind. He thought it was better to keep them together, which I thought was a very surprising conclusion.
Joe.
Joe Whitty.
Whitty was that the schools have failed them, and that's one of the reasons why they've turned to crime. And if we can address that problem and make successes of some of these youngsters, they achieve success.
If it is costing money to put these young offenders behind bars, well, there's got to be another way. And I think a military camp and a military-style officers, in some way, for a younger generation, 16 to 18, that might help, instead of putting them in the prisons. If they turn to crime, then...
On the grounds that you may incriminate yourself.
Could we just talk one at a time?
Crime may go down a slippery slope.
Is it too predictable? Is prison too predictable? They know what they're going to face when they go in. I say what Keith's saying there. I think if it was more varied and the punishments were more varied within the prison, so they seem to drop into a niche, don't they? They go in, oh, here we go, I do this every day, as he said. I know what I'm going to have Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Perhaps it's too predictable.
They're not going far enough underneath the skin of the problem to get it sorted. They're just going so that the public go, oh great, there's more of them getting locked away. I mean, even as Scott Stevens said, it's only a bloody warehouse at the end of the day.
Why are these people being put in prison? They've been put in prison to punish. I would say some of them. Most of them being put in prison to keep them out of our way. As he said, warehouse them. You're not fit to live with us, go away. We don't want you.
That wouldn't work, because if you say to a prisoner you're never going to come out, it's going to create one heck of a problem inside the management, is the word they used.
Yeah.
It couldn't be managed. So, bring back the capital punishment. Get rid of them, eradicate them.
In prison, it doesn't seem to be doing them any good at all. I know they do it in other countries, but they don't do it here. If they was to say a real criminal, lose a couple of fingers, would this Scott have gone out and done it again if he'd chopped a couple of his fingers off?
Were the experts offering good fact and opinions and that added to what they'd already discussed amongst themselves?
Sometimes, but I heard some of the citizens say half-truths. And so that I thought was sophisticated, because each of the experts were disagreeing. That was the first point we wanted the citizens to realize, so they wouldn't just defer to the experts. But now seeing the limitations of the positions, which is also very good.
Have you personally witnessed much crime on the streets as a result of not seeing policemen?
Yes. Definitely. I mean, if the police don't believe this theory, why do they have cardboard policemen and then claim that that cuts crime? Why do they have cardboard cutouts of cars, which they have where I live? And they say that's
cutouts of policemen?
Yes, they have them standing in supermarkets and they claim that that cuts crime.
Character building. All the real questions.
Prison service didn't work.
Right,
shove them about.
I think we're wasting our money.
I've been brought here this weekend on the strength of a motion of rising crime. What should we do?
Right.
Not what should we not do and what should we abolish and avoid doing. And I think the politicians should be asked that question.
Do you want
What should they do?
Do you want to ask it as simply as
Yeah,
that?
what are you going to do about it? You know, we're all stuck with rising crime. Come up with some answers.
I want to know that I can go back to my community and feel that something is being done, that they will not keep taking away from my community. But surely everybody must feel something about that.
You've got to ask the politicians that question. Are they prepared to go to the public and say, we can reduce crime, but you're going to have to put your taxes up to pay for it, or we've got to pay for it?
Let them answer it.
That's right. That's...
Let's not us answer, because
Yeah.
I don't think that's what we are doing.
I just want to ask them the question.
Ask it.
Our money.
Before we wind up for tonight, I would like to say thank you very, very much for all your hard work. I've enjoyed it tremendously today. I hope you're going to enjoy yourselves this evening. Go away and relax and come back refreshed and looking forward to more and hopefully exciting and interesting debating tomorrow.
The experience of the day has changed some people.
Some of my views have changed. The biggest thing that's changed is bobbies in the beat. I mean, before I would have said more bobbies in the beat would have made a big difference. But from what I've been told in this so far, it makes no difference.
I learned from the police experts that just putting more money and putting more bobbies on the beat does not. It may give the community a sense of security, but it doesn't. It may act also as a deterrent, but it doesn't really stop crime.
I feel the right to silence was an interesting one in that I felt initially that perhaps somebody shouldn't be allowed the right to silence. But I think now I would say that we must retain that right to silence as a protective mechanism for people, as I am now, being put on the spot and being enticed to say things that they wouldn't normally say on the heat of the moment.
Our 300 have time now to reflect. In the morning, they'll confront the politicians.
You just need two glasses because there's only two people.
Sunday morning, and the preparations are underway for the studio confrontation with the politicians. We know that many of our 300 have low expectations of politicians.
I think we're about to face the hardest part because they're so disdainful of politicians. They don't expect much. They actually expected something from the experts. We're, to some modest degree, disappointed, but they don't expect anything of the politicians.
I'm probably still open-minded about it. I hope I am. I still think MPs are individual people, and if they can prove to me that they do speak from their heart, then I will listen.
I hope to get from the politicians this morning some good answers to some good questions. No going round the houses like they generally do when you see them on television.
Are you hearing me on 4 yet?
Both of you turn to block A. Block A. Question, please, from Mrs. Clark. Fine.
Well, my view of politicians are just all puppets. You can't really get anything done. They're just, I don't know, they're just there for the votes.
I don't think, from listening to the experts yesterday, that the people are really represented by the politicians.
Questions are going to be asked, and they're going to say, historically we've done this and statistics show this. And what history and statistics show is that politicians are very, very slow to do anything that might jeopardise their seats in future elections.
So is this a busy day for you?
Oh yeah. Well, it's not actually too bad. Do you like a cone?
No, I'm fine. It's okay, I think.
Thank you very much. Have you got your badges? What are your bees? Right.
Oh, smiling. Right, I'm out the way. There we go.
Sue's here.
We've been up and down there, up and down here, up and down there, back over here now.
Barbara Hartnett. Right, Barbara, you're up there. You should find a vacant seat close to the centre, 3 or 4 rows up, yeah? Tony, good morning. My name's David. I'm Flow Manager for the Link.
So enjoy yourselves. Right, so let's welcome the first politician who's come to listen to your questions and give answers. Please welcome the Shadow Secretary for Home Affairs for Labour, Tony Blair. So let's start with our first question. It comes from Alison Samuels. Where are you, Alison?
You've got the motto, tough on crime, tough on the causes of crime. Is there a real policy behind that, or is it just a slogan?
There is a policy behind it. What I believe that you require is to get away from this idea that you choose between either trying to prevent crime and deal with its causes or simply punish the criminal, and that you want a criminal justice system that actually works and is functioning effectively, but also a society that's prepared to act and cooperate in a much better way in preventing crime and tackling some of the underlying causes of crime and dealing with problems like the link between crime and drugs and so forth. And that's the general basis of the policy. And what we've done in each of the areas is try and put forward specific policies to back that up. For example, in relation to juvenile offenders and so forth.
Well, that's a general explanation of what the slogan represents. But in particular, what do you think are the causes of crime? Do you have evidence for what they are, and how specifically are you going to tackle them?
Well, I think there are two elements that I would put into tackling the causes of crime and trying to prevent crime. One is, if you like, prevention in the narrow sense, because only 1 in 50 crimes ever actually leads to a conviction. And so it's important, for example, that in local areas, we've suggested that you set up new partnerships between the police, local authorities, local schools, local businesses, where they get together, they sit round a table, they target the crime priorities in their own individual area and then take the measures most appropriate to that area. And there are areas of the country where they've been trying that approach and it's actually worked. So there's that narrow element of prevention. And then there's the broader element. I mean, this is just a personal view, but I think that the real problem that we face is that many of our young people are growing up in circumstances where they don't have much of a stake in society, where their environment is characterized, if you like, by family instability, by drugs, poverty, poor educational opportunity, high levels of youth unemployment. And I think it is also important that we try and tackle those causes as well.
Let's take another question. Nigel Trumper, where are you? Yes, up here.
We know from the experts, or at least we've heard from the so-called experts and an ex-criminal, that unemployment is not the root cause of crime. But your party and you link the two together. How can you justify that?
I don't think that unemployment causes crime in the sense that people who become unemployed rush out and commit criminal offences. But I think that we have got a real problem in this country in creating what I would call a sort of subculture of which unemployment and high levels of unemployment in the family are a part, but where kids grow up just without the basic stable factors that go to make up a decent and law-abiding community. And I think that employment and jobs is one part of that. I mean, if people feel they've got the prospect of going out and getting a job, and if their mother or father are working and bringing in a working wage, then I think people feel they've got much more of a stake in society. They belong much more to society.
Let's take another question. Stan Norton, where are you? Yes.
If our group is representative of public opinion, the general feeling is that harsher sentences and longer sentences should be the norm to punish the criminal, and that would be the answer to crime. What do you feel?
Firstly, I think that harsher sentences by themselves are not going to work in this area. I think it's the easiest form of political rhetoric. It's probably the most popular. But I don't think in themselves they are going to cure the problem. But the second thing I would say is that I would take consistency of sentencing before I think I would take necessarily in individual cases longer sentences. And I think that is where we need much more sensitive court systems, better guidelines for judges, perhaps judges that are occasionally a bit more in touch with ordinary people than sometimes they are. And I think that the odd case of bad sentencing serves to undermine the whole system to a much greater degree than we ever realise. And therefore I would like to see, you know, sure, in certain circumstances I think we do have to get tougher, but I think it's got to be part of an overall programme that brings us better and more consistent sentencing, and also means that sentencing is just one part of the reform of the criminal justice system.
I feel at the moment the general public feels that the criminal gets the best end of the stick,
sure,
and the victim is the one that suffers rather than the criminal.
Yeah, can I just make one other point here? I mean, I think people do think that. And that is that some of the problems that are faced are problems within the system itself. The way that victims and witnesses are treated, for example, is often very, very bad. Now, that hugely undermines confidence in the criminal justice system. If people think, I mean, I've visited areas where people know the people that are committing the crimes, but they're intimidated and they're frightened to come forward. Now, if that type of thing happens, you can have all the tough sentences you like, in theory, but you're not going to get the cases brought to court. And the other thing is that I think cases take far too long to get to court, and I think the way the Crown Prosecution Service operates is that it doesn't take nearly enough account of the views of the victim in working out how to proceed with the case.
Let's move to another area of discussion that's been looked at this weekend. Carmel Meredith, your question.
Is there a causal relationship between violence on television and in videos and the increase in children committing crimes? If so, what are you going to do about it?
I think we know the types of videos that we're talking about, and I think that it's not if you have, you know, a child sees one of those videos on one occasion and that then, you know, turns them into a serial killer. I think that would be daft. But I think that if it is combined again with other things, if in a sense it is a symptom of something that is wrong in that family, and you have the kids having a sort of daily or weekly diet of that type of gratuitous violence, then I think it desensitizes them in quite an important way. And I'm very unhappy about some of the videos that we've seen, even on television, never mind in the home video shop.
Does that answer your question, Carmel?
Can I just ask one more
Sure.
thing? Do you have children yourself, and how old are they?
They're 10, 8 and 6, so this is very much on my mind.
Do you then monitor what they watch on television before 9 o'clock? Do you ever have to turn off your television?
Yes.
You
yes,
do?
I do. Mm.
Doesn't that speak volumes?
Yes, I think it does. I mean, I'm quite surprised sometimes at things you see on relatively early, and, you know, some of the language that's sometimes used in television.
So that's your constant daily watching?
Yeah, I think that I try and exercise control the whole time. The risk is not just what they may watch in the home, but what they watch with friends. And I'm sometimes very surprised at what my kids tell me other kids have watched, you know, when they say, why can't we watch such and such? Because, you know.
Can we take another comment from the lady over here, the second row? Yes.
Do you not feel that those responsible for deciding what should be shown on television, any programme, that something they should be looked at? These people who make the decisions, it's after all they who are saying, right, this is what the public want. Do we want it though? I certainly don't.
I think that one of the things that we should say as citizens in society is we don't find this type of thing legitimate. We don't want it. And part of the reason why I thought it was important to legislate in the House of Commons on the so-called video nasties was, as I was saying earlier, not just to make the point against what was happening, but to send out a signal from society to be picked up by the broadcasters that we don't like our children growing up with this being considered normal, because it isn't normal.
Perhaps the difficulty is how society, whatever society is, gets its voice heard, and maybe that's one of the things that this exercise is about. Where's Tina Lambert? What's your question?
There's definite lack of discipline in schools. What will you do to improve the discipline?
Well, I think the most important thing is to support the teachers when they're actually trying to exert discipline in schools. And, I mean, I think there has been a tendency over a period of time to regard teachers that are exerting discipline as if there was some sort of infringement of the rights of the children. I think, I mean, speaking again as a parent, my first instinct, if my kid has got into trouble at school, is the same instinct that my father and mother had, which is, you know, what have you done wrong? And I think that is very, very important. The schools that are operating effectively are those where discipline is not just something that operates by itself, but there's a whole culture in the school that is geared towards improving the children. But you need that ethos reinforced, not just in the school, but right throughout the community. And I think it's very, very important then when the kids come out of school, they also think there's something for them at the end of it, you know, that they've got some chance of getting a job and settling down.
And that's it. Time is up, I'm afraid, ladies and gentlemen. So give your thanks, please, to Tony Blair. Tony, thank you very much indeed.
I thought he answered the questions very well. He didn't bring politics into it. And I think if all politicians answered them as truthfully as that, you'd have more respect for politicians generally.
This whole weekend, everything we've had have been soft answers that may be slightly geared towards kind of massaging people's thoughts and worries instead of giving hard answers. These are hard questions that are being answered, and he was very good, but he just slid away from the answers.
In the time that we had, he answered very honestly, and I was very impressed with his answers. I'd like to get him by himself and have an hour and talk to him, but yes, I was very impressed with his answer.
Right, so wake up. So we've heard from the Labour Party, we've heard from Tony Blair. What do the Liberal Democrats have to say? Will you please now welcome their spokesman on Home Affairs, Robert McLennan. And let's kick off with a question from Geoffrey Ewing. Where are you? Yes.
Yes, your party stated that they intend to spend more money on neighbourhood watch schemes, education. But really, the people of this country want longer prison sentences and tougher prisons. What do you think about that?
Well, I think we have to look at the relative ineffectiveness of prisons in dealing with crime, and then see how we can both make prisons more effective, because there are cases where the public is threatened by people being at loose, or they've committed a crime that is so serious that there is no alternative to incarceration. And we have to recognize that about 67% of those who go to prison reoffend when they come out, and that's a pretty poor indictment. Secondly, on the prevention side, I think it's particularly important to recognize that most offending, particularly against property, is done in the neighborhood and is opportunistic crime. It's crime that need not have been committed if we had as citizens taken proper steps to protect our property. If you seek to prevent burglars coming back a second time, which they do, you can reduce reoffending very considerably.
Are you satisfied, Geoffrey?
Yeah, I agree with that for the neighbourhood watch, but the part regarding the sentencing and the prisons, I don't agree with that. My point is this. Homicide, capital punishment for homicide. They have taken a life. The person, the victim, whose life they've taken, he's been sentenced to death.
To have a single sentence for murder of the death penalty doesn't reflect the different degrees of gravity. The second point that has to be made about capital punishment is that unfortunately all criminal justice systems result occasionally in the verdict being the wrong one. Miscarriages of justice take place, and if there is a mistake, and we know of many cases, unfortunately, where the jury's got it wrong, in capital cases, you cannot give redress after the event.
Now, these are areas we've discussed quite a bit over this weekend. So I'd like to bring in some more views. Steve Narry, where are you? Yes.
I believe that capital punishment should be brought in for a range of crimes, not necessarily just for murder, whereupon we could get rid of, for instance, all drug pushers, etc. What you've got to do is you have to round the people up, you have to put them through the court, and you have to hang them by the dozen, by the 100. Get rid of them. Then, what you have a situation there...
I have to say, in answer to that the Americans do have capital punishment, and there is no evidence that those categories of offence for which there is capital punishment in the United States, in some states, are actually more successful in dealing with the problem than the states that don't have it. There's no evidence that capital punishment is a more effective deterrent than other forms of penalty.
OK, let's move to the other side of the spectrum, if you like. Question from Eleanor McQueenie.
Where I live, there's a lot of kids who, just vandalise the place. I mean, the parents don't care. The parents don't stop them from doing it. And how could we go about making the parents make the children stop? You know,
I think that
teaching them right from wrong.
I think that this kind of thing cannot be laid down from the centre by Parliament or by legislation or anything of that sort. This has to be handled at a very local level. You need to have the cooperation of people within the community. You need the local authority, you need community groups, you need community housing groups, you need voluntary agencies to come together and tackle these problems when they are a problem in a particular community.
We've had a couple of questions on this. I might bring in Nigel Young. Where are you? Yes.
Thank you. Shouldn't parents be made legally and financially responsible if their children commit crimes and forced to appear alongside them in court if necessary?
Well, I think that parents are morally responsible if their children are out of control. But that cannot remove from the children themselves the liability for their own actions. So I do think there is a case for associating the parents in the process. And that actually happens in Scotland in the children's panel system, which I think is a very healthy system which we could look at with favour in all parts of the United Kingdom.
Thank you. Let's take another question. The lady here.
Would you agree it would be sensible, in view of the seriousness of crime that we all have suffered from, to forget politics and cooperate more, instead of scoring points one party against another?
I'm very strongly in favour of cross-party agreement where it can be achieved on matters of criminal justice. No party is the party of law and order. All political parties are concerned about a problem which afflicts society, and a party which has presided over the doubling of crime, recorded crime rates since it came to office 15 years ago, least of all perhaps is entitled to claim that it is the party of law and order.
And that's it, I'm afraid. Time is up. So can I ask you to thank Robert McLennan?
I think the stuff he was talking about there is perfectly right. I quite agree with everything he said. I disagree with what the gentleman was saying up there about the death penalty.
My question wasn't really answered by him. He come up with what seems to be the same sort of answers which have been put before.
I wonder what half the people who were clapping would think if any of their relatives were caught taking drugs in and were going to be executed.
So now is the opportunity to hear from the politicians, better informed as they now are, what their views on what they've heard.
They've only been better informed for a day.
2. Yeah, well,
2 days.
But the other thing, of course, you find is people are much better informed than you think they are.
Yeah.
My opinion is at the end of the day, they're going to take no notice of the public. They've got a good job, they're not going to rattle their cage for us.
For the Conservative Party, please welcome the Chairman of the Home Affairs Select Committee, Sir Ivan Lawrence. Thanks very much for coming. Have a seat. And let's kick off with a question from Kim Hodges. Where are you? Yes.
Yes, the Conservatives have cultured and nurtured an image of being the party of law and order for a number of years now. You see it at party conferences where the party faithful seem to get quite excited. This whole symposium today, this surely is a testament to the fact that the Conservative Party aren't the party of law and order. Could you comment on that, please?
Well, I'm afraid that lawlessness is something which is happening throughout the world to an alarming extent. It's not just happening here in Britain. And we've taken a large number of steps to try to contain it, to try to improve the situation. They're not enough. We're taking more, and hopefully we will be able to bring it down. But I'm afraid that the world is a very changed place, and with those changes have come massive increases in lawlessness everywhere.
Well, the Conservatives have been in power now for 4 successive governments for 15 years, and they're empowered to do something about it.
Every year we've introduced crime control legislation. I mean, what the government does is introduces legislation and provides finance. We've improved the prevention, we've improved the chances of catching, we've improved the chances of convicting, we've improved the chances of sentencing. Now, there are a lot of things that have happened recently which have changed the situation. There's been the runaway outbreak of drugs throughout the world. There's been an increase in juvenile crime, which is very substantial and is a reaction to the breakdown of our education system, our family systems. These things have come upon us in the last 5, 10 years, weren't there 20 or 30 years ago.
Can I pause you there,
Sorry.
Sir Ryan? Because
Yeah.
I mean, I want to get in as many points as possible. Gentleman up there, yes.
To blame foreigners for the failures of your Conservative government is ridiculous. For those elements where the government does have control, how do you explain, and please be precise, the failure of successive Conservative governments to keep these promises? Are you accountable, or are you going to blame that on foreigners?
Well, no. Now, that's unfair. I'm not blaming foreigners for the reduction in crime. I'm merely saying...
Are you not a representative of the Conservative Party?
That Britain is not the only country...
Let him answer.
That Britain is not the only country which has had this runaway increase in crime. That's all I'm saying. I'm not blaming foreigners, and you've misunderstood me.
Answer the question.
Now, you're wrong in saying that we haven't reduced crime. There are areas...
It is the view of the experts, the police, the statistics, and the general public that crime has got worse. Now, if you're saying that all those are wrong...
Some crime has got worse, and some crime has got better. I agree it's patchy. We used to have a terrible amount of crime on London transport. That has almost stopped. There's been a reduction of 18% in the amount of burglaries, amount of crime in the City of London over the past year. There's been a reduction of 14% in the number of burglaries in the whole of London in the past year. There have been reductions of something like 66 and 70% of crime on housing estates where preventive community measures have taken place.
Thank you. Let's take another question. Barbara Hartley, where are you? Yes.
The Church of England has accused the Conservative Party of creating a selfish and greedy society. Is this why crime is on the increase?
Well, I don't accept that. There are moralistic approaches to everything that goes on. There's realistic or there's political approaches to the way things are happening. We can't stop people being greedy. How do you improve the economy of a country? By competition, by getting people to compete in businesses, to set up businesses, to flourish, to produce the wealth from which the taxes are taken, for which the poor are helped. So, you know, I know that encourages a fair amount of the kind of greed which is competition between people, but it can't be helped.
Thank you. Let's take some comments. Yes, gentleman here.
Given the clear link between crime and unemployment, how do you coordinate employment policies with crime policies?
Well, we want to get as many people into work as possible, and we've reduced the number of people unemployed in this country by 250,000 over the last year alone, and we'll go on doing it. But at the end of the day, people are responsible for themselves. They can't blame society. They can't blame unemployment. They can't blame economic hardship. You don't become a criminal just because you're going through economic hardship. There are a lot of people out there who are decent, law-abiding citizens who are in some kind of financial trouble, and they don't revert to crime.
Thank you. Let's take some comments. Yes, gentleman here.
If you give people no hope, no future, no jobs, and poor housing, I don't see how you're ever going to solve any crime.
Well, we give people hope, we give people a future, we give people... We give people more housing and we give people more jobs.
Sally Vivian, where are you? Yes.
Yes, people similar to me shouldn't have the right to be silent. People can't speak for themselves, similar to me. And you've taken that away. That it's very handy to have the right for silence because it protects the person who's actually innocent and hasn't done anything wrong at all.
I think you're referring to the so-called abolition of the right to silence in the Criminal Justice Bill which has gone through. May I say this, that I think that this is a very exaggerated subject. All that is going to happen is that if somebody has been caught red-handed, more or less, not exclusively, but with the goods in his hand, you would expect him to say, if he's got a defence, what his defence is. But the courts don't allow that to happen.
Sorry,
the courts say
sorry. You've gone beyond my question. My question was, it was to protect the person similar, like myself, with a learning disability. It will say yes, when I haven't actually done anything wrong at all.
The law will protect them because the judge will not allow an adverse comment to be made in any case where it's quite obvious that an adverse comment would be unfair. If somebody doesn't understand the question, for whatever reason...
Why has it been taken away then?
No.
Ask me that.
All that is going to happen is, firstly, that more criminals will be convicted, and secondly, it will be that the police who have been very, very frustrated in the past about the right to silence will be less tempted to do dishonest things than they've been in the past, and that's been one of the reasons for the
person
I have, no, you haven't understood my answer, but I've answered the question.
The person might be innocent, he can't speak for, she or he can't speak for themselves that much. So they need somebody to stick up for them.
Do you want to try again?
Yes, well...
For goodness sake!
You will be protected, Sally. I promise you that there is no way in which somebody who has got a learning disability will be at any disadvantage out of the proposed changes in the law. I know we haven't persuaded you, but you will be persuaded.
Now let's move on. Yes.
One of the issues that's come out from this weekend's discussion, and the Chief Constable did say it himself yesterday, is that police are desperately short of resources.
Well, we've increased the police resources massively, and you can go on doing it. Having really sort of thrown massive sums of money at the police and the law and order system. It's still not working effectively because there is a decline in the number of arrests that the police are making. And if anybody with any business experience were to look at this situation and see how much money has gone in, how much the situation has been improved, and still the production is falling, you say this is a problem of management and a problem of organisation. And that is what the government is applying its mind to, reorganising, better managing the police so that it can become more effective and more efficient than it's ever been.
Question from David Stevens. Yes, sir.
Yes, what I would like to know, and I've learnt this weekend, I think the majority of people here would like to know, is why does the Conservative Party not support a referendum on capital punishment?
The government says this is a matter of conscience upon which people have individual views, and that it's not a government matter, it's a matter for the whole of Parliament. I'm afraid you're leaning on an open door with me. I support capital punishment because I believe it would save many, many innocent lives.
And that's where we leave it. Time is up. Will you please thank Sir Ivan Lawrence?
He kept waffling on instead of listening to what I had to say.
They sort of work round the question, and I give questions with a question. You know, I didn't really answer it. And in the end, you didn't know what the original question was.
What's interested me is the lack of power the people have. And judging by the capital punishment thing, I'm glad that the people haven't got the power, because they haven't got the common sense or intelligence.
So they've heard the politicians' views. But have their own opinions on crime really changed in any way? The moment of decision is approaching for our groups. They must make up their minds about crime.
I can't give you a better answer than that I agree with you.
But there's a hiccup in Steve's group. Someone's invited Sir Ivan Lawrence to join it. He's explaining how an MP understands grassroots opinion.
Or they come to me to tell me what's really bugging them. And I like that. You know, I go back to my constituency at the weekend looking forward to plugging in to my grassroots and people telling me what it is worries them.
But surely you've got a situation where if you've got a majority of people who actually support something, no matter what it is, and the members of Parliament actually vote against something, against the same thing, so you've got a situation where people do not want to bother going to the MP because so what?
It's a good debate, but it can't go on.
Voted for me, I'm sure want to see it back.
Sir Ivan, can I interrupt a second? I'm slightly worried about this meeting because we're conducting a scientific poll here, and I'm slightly worried that you are going to, your presence here is going to affect this small group.
I'll go.
But
In the groups, the focus is on the performance of the politicians they've just heard in studio.
Yeah. From Tony, we got more sensible answers, and I think that we got from the other two. He spoke from the heart, where the other two were promoting their own individual parties, which I did not like. I thought that was a load of rubbish. We were there to answer questions, not brag about what they've achieved, which that's all they were doing, the Conservatives and the Liberals.
He seemed more genuine. I don't know why, but it just seemed more genuine than the other two.
Everyone goes on about how the Labour guy, he spoke well, but he's not in power, so he probably end up, he would just be the same as the Conservative guy when he was in, because they're all the same as one another anyway.
Want to.
The experience of this weekend is now making many of the 300 question the way British democracy works. They feel that under the current system, little attention is paid to the views of the voter outside general election campaigns.
But everyone does agree on certain things, and I think it would be a good idea for somebody to take notice of that everyone does agree on capital punishment.
I think what we really want to know is anything going to be done about it? We're all here discussing it all weekend, but is there anything going to be done about it?
No, I doubt it. We're all very like-minded in our thinking. Listening to the experts yesterday and the politicians this morning, I don't think anything will be done. We can't do anything about it.
But in Steve's group, now Sir Ivan has left, Carmel is feeling that the weekend has been a very positive experience.
So this weekend has proved to me that don't be apathetic, find out about your subject. And what I like about it is that we've covered such a wide range of opinions that the opinion furthest away from me has made me think and strengthen my own opinion.
People that you speak to have got opposite opinions to you in some respects, but what happens is you've given people the information and all it's done is it is polarised those original views out further with the same information given to the individuals.
The questionnaire that I filled in 4 weeks ago, I might as well rip up now and put in the bin because it was an absolute waste of time.
Why?
Because I didn't know enough about it.
The questionnaires will come with your own name on.
And now the big moment. The 300 must decide. They were asked before they came what they thought of all aspects of crime. Now they're going to answer all those same questions again on sentencing, policing, juvenile crime, the rights of suspects.
Now that they've been subjected to this torrent of information from experts, from leaflets and from each other, the question is, have they changed? Is the matured view the same as the view that was spontaneous?
And I also think people will have, even if they have some of the same opinions, they'll have different reasons for them. And there'll be opinions that will then be worth listening to because they will have been thought through.
Just about
Our 300 volunteers in this remarkable experiment in democracy return to their normal lives. They're a random, representative sample of the British people. Will this experience change their views? The independent survey organisation Social and Community Planning Research, SCPR. Here the results are entered in and analysed. At the start of the experiment, SCPR asked a random sample of almost 900 British people about crime. Our 300 came from that bigger group and closely mirrored its views to start with. But as they analysed the new questionnaires from the weekend, it's soon clear there are now big changes in their attitude to crime. Nearly everyone who came has changed in some way. There have been some significant shifts. Their responses on a wide range of crime issues has altered dramatically. The treatment of young offenders, alternatives to prison, bending police rules, even the assumption of a suspect's guilt or innocence.
Let them suffer. Let them think about what they've done.
When they started out, our 300 people had significantly more faith in the prison system than they ended up with.
Get them like a bug and we stick a pin through them.
Before the weekend, 57% of our 300 thought that sending more offenders to prison was an effective way of cutting crime. After the weekend, only 38% thought that, a fall of 19%.
The kids who come into the prison are the same kids who've been coming into prison for the last 100, 120 years. They're the poor, the dispossessed, basically they are poorly educated and there is no hope for the future. And even more so today because
The debates over the weekend caused a significant change of attitude away from sending first-time offenders to prison. There was an increasing concern about putting young people in jail alongside hardened criminals.
They came thinking that prison was a panacea, an easy solution to all sorts of crime, that it would prevent crime as well as punish people. I think they learned during the weekend that the prisons weren't all that effective, certainly in terms of changing people.
It worked. I couldn't, for years I've been advocating this, and people said this was a crazy idea from a nutty professor. Well, now it's a real process. It works in a credible way. It may still be from a nutty professor, but it worked, and it worked in very much the way that we envisioned. The people came, they talked, they thought about it, and they changed.
We used to have 2 village policemen who used to be there, one on duty, with the 2 of them covered the town for the whole time.
There were other significant changes too. Before the weekend, 63% believed more police on the beat would be very effective in cutting crime. But by the end, that number had gone down to 51%, a fall of 12%.
But to tell them if they thought at the end of the day they were going to be behind, of course they will.
On hanging, there was no change. A 2/3 majority still supported it.
The person might be innocent, he can't speak, she or he can't speak for themselves.
But on a suspect's right to silence, there was a big change. Only 36% of our people initially believed the right to silence should be kept. Now almost half our sample believe it should be retained. That's an increase of 13%.
I didn't have any views on prevention of crime with children, and now I feel that is a really big part of cracking crime, is to stop it before it happens.
Asked if they thought the government should concentrate more on punishment than on reform, a majority, 55%, initially agreed. But now only a minority, 45%, think that. That's down 10%.
At the beginning of this exercise, we said we're giving these 300 people 48 hours to tackle crime. Do you think they have tackled crime?
I think that they've done it perhaps more than they've ever done it before in their lives, and in a much bigger dose. But of course the result is that they realise that it's a lot more complicated than they came in thinking.
The biggest thing I've changed my mind about is sending people to prison. I think I very glibly said, yes, send them to prison without any thought. The experts showed me that I was wrong. And everything they said made sense. It's just that in the course of our lives, we never have the time to sit and think about these subjects. So the whole concept of this weekend has worked for me.
In a general election, or in the run-up to a general election, how might this kind of exercise be used?
On the issues with representatives of the parties and a national random sample of the public, and television broadcasting what the people really think after they've had a chance to think through the issues, instead of top-of-the-head reactions to unread election manifestos and unwatched party political broadcasts and shrinking sound bites. This is a way of directly involving the people in the process under conditions where they can get an informed view of all the competing arguments and have all the people statistically represented. So it's different from anything that has ever been done on television, anywhere. I mean, this Manchester experiment should serve as an example, and I think it will be studied and debated for years to come.
Discussing politics with other people and issues with other people, you do change your mind, because you come with a format, and then when you meet and listen to the people, you can put it together better of what the general public want. And this is really what referendums and politics is about. It should go to the people and let them do the discussions and make the decisions, because after all, we pay their wages.
I feel I've got far less power than I thought I had, and the people have got less power than I thought we had. I can see the government are not reflecting the people.
And I think the whole thing's been a great success, and I just hope that some good will come out of this, and that the powers that be will take note of the voice of the people.
So that's it. The experiment is complete. A world first. The British people in microcosm have tried out a new form of democracy. A democracy in which they've had time to think about an issue, to find out the facts and then debate it amongst themselves. And as you've seen and heard, it changed them dramatically. So what would happen if this was applied to other areas of policy? Indeed, to a general election, or the running of the country? Would that be a good idea? That's up to you, the people, to decide.